Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arya with the Hurricane Watch Team, the latest update on the tropics. We got quite a bit we need to talk about. First, we're gonna start off by talking about this disturbance in the western Atlantic, which is expected to move over the Florida Peninsula into the Gulf by northeastern Gulf by later on Tuesday, as environmental conditions do in fact appear favorable, and some gradual development of the system is possible as it moves westward to west-northwestward across the northeastern and north central portions of the Gulf of Mexico during the middle to latter part of the week. Now, regardless of development, heavy rainfall could produce localized flash flooding over portions of Florida and the north central Gulf Coast through the middle to latter portion of this week. There's a 10% chance of it developing in the next 48 hours and a 30% chance over the next 7 days. So here is the latest satellite imagery. There does appear to be a little bit of wind shear, but they do believe where the center of this storm is at, there is some convection being blown away from the center, which is prohibiting any further development of the system. I want to go to the forecast models and talk a little bit about where we do expect this system to go. So again, there it is here. We're just going to mark it here with an X or an L. I'll do an L here, and it's going to generally move in this direction across the western or eastern portions of the Gulf of Mexico, western Atlantic. There, put this into motion. We'll don't really see a whole lot develop with this system from the GFS model. Other models, however, do show a little bit more. Specifically, the Icon model is a little bit more aggressive with this system that we have seen. Again, there you can see it moving across the Florida Panhandle. We do expect heavy rain, perhaps some flooding. We do get a low developing there. We do see it intensifying below 1,000 millibars, and there it looks like 985 millibars close to New Orleans, Louisiana. Looks like New Orleans, Louisiana. From this particular model here, the Icon, it would be on the east side, so it would be on the wet side of the storm, meaning they would get a lot of heavy rain, they get a lot of flooding, as well as those strong gusty winds. If we're looking at 985 millibars, we could be seeing Category 1 upwards of 90 miles an hour, 95 mile an hour winds. If we do see stronger than that, that'd be Category 2, upwards of 100 miles an hour. But that's just when this one particular model. I do expect this to, if we do see any kind of development, a tropical depression, tropical storm, it's most likely. A hurricane seems a little bit on the aggressive side. But the biggest threat with this system, I do believe, is going to be that heavy rain and flooding first there in Florida, and then in the north central Gulf Coast, particularly Louisiana. However, where in Louisiana it makes landfall, if this storm even develops, is uncertain. Some models have been showing as far west as Houston and Beaumont and Galveston. Other models are not even showing it developing. This one particular model showing farther east, closer to New Orleans. So the models are still pretty not pinpointing on an exact area. So generally, the north central Gulf Coast needs to monitor and watch this system. Now, regardless of development, once again, the biggest threat with this system is going to be that heavy rain and flooding that we could see with this. This model does, in fact, actually, I need to go and take a look at the upper dynamics here. Take a look at the vorticity. So we do have a little bit of spin here. As you can see, it does actually show some bit of a spin develop. It looks, again, showing west of New Orleans, Louisiana there, which means New Orleans would be on the east side, which does mean that New Orleans would still be on the west side of this system. It does show this system moving in. Let's take a look at the lower dynamics and see what they're showing with the vorticity at the low levels. So again, we do see that, again, that system moving across Florida and into New Orleans and some of the areas in eastern Louisiana. However, again, flooding and heavy rain would be the biggest issue with this system. We could see some gusty winds. Now exactly how strong doesn't really particularly show a super well defined system. 10-12 millibars. Intensity with this model is not very good. It is better about forecasting location of where these storms go. So that's really all I want to say about that system. I want to continue to move on and talk a little bit about the West Pacific because the West Pacific does look like it's going to get active. We're looking at 95 W. Not going to intensify into something super intense, but there are some models that we are watching that could become pretty much stronger. Taking a look at the sea surface temperatures in the West Pacific, there's the Philippines right here, Indonesia down here, China, Taiwan, the Korean Peninsula, Japan. So, looking at these temperatures, we're seeing 30 degrees, 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. So we're seeing 87, 88, almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit there in the West Pacific. We get some of these storms between 106 degrees east and 130 degrees east. That's really where we could see some more storms that could intensify over these warm sea surface temperatures. Now, how deep does this water go? Is it super deep? Generally looking, it's generally pretty deep. Generally looking in this area, it looks like about 150 kilojoules per square centimeter. However, we do have areas of white, which does show 190 to 200 kilojoules per square centimeter. So there's a lot of energy in the water, and I do expect by August into September, even October and November. Remember, November of 2013 is where we had Typhoon Haiyan, and the water temperatures were incredibly hot. And we had water not only hot at the surface, but it went down to a very great depth. So that's why it's important to know how deep does this water go, because you could have upwelling where you actually begin to upwell water, colder water to the surface, and that can actually kill the storm, which is kind of what you would want. However, with how warm these sea surface temperatures, they do go down to a depth, so I do not expect there to be any sort of upwelling of cold waters. Western Atlantic, Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, and the tropical Atlantic there, we do have quite a bit of warm water down to a depth. Lots of sea surface temperature does go down below the surface, especially in the Caribbean along the Gulf Stream, through the loop current there, and then around the Atlantic there. We do have some relatively warm water there in the Gulf of Mexico. Again, about 100 kilojoules per square centimeter, but again, we do have spotches of 150 plus kilojoules per square centimeter there in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. Looking at those sea surface temperature anomalies, generally speaking, across the entire Western Atlantic here, we do have sea surface temperatures that are generally warmer than average. However, we do have a few areas in the Western Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Gulf of Mexico that are at average or just slightly below average. But generally speaking, the whole entire picture, we're seeing temperatures above average right now. And those are the sea surface temperatures. Again, right there, right up against Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, we do see those temperatures at about 31 degrees Celsius. Those sea surface temperatures are very, very warm. Even 30, 31 degrees Celsius just off the coast of Cuba there. And in the Bahamas, we also have 30 and 31 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures. So given that this is what we're looking at, I'm going to go back to the models here and talk a little bit about what we could see in terms of some systems here in the West Pacific. So I'm going to go to the West Pacific, and we're going to talk about that next. Looking at this model particularly is better at being able to forecast location of systems versus intensity. Getting an idea of where that storm is going to go is going to be very helpful. Then we can work on forecasting and getting a better idea of how strong these storms are going to be. So taking a look at where that system, again, we are watching some systems trying to develop there in the West Pacific, does show that we could see certainly some storms developing there in the West Pacific that could be generally that could impact China, as well as the northern Philippines, Taiwan, as well as Japan and the mainland of China. Now, if we take a look at the GFS, this gives us a little bit better idea of just how strong they could be. Now, again, this first storm comes up, could potentially make a landfall there in the northern Philippines. Regardless, there'd be some heavy rain, some pretty gusty winds there, and some rip currents for Taiwan as well as China. And we could even see a landfall there in China as well. But we do have these two systems, which do a bit of a dance around each other. The Fujiwara effect of the smaller system is going to be absorbed by the larger system. But it does become relatively intense there, down into the 930s to millibars and the 940s. So we could see a Cat 3, Cat 4 equivalent of a typhoon there in those islands off the those Japanese islands there. So we could see some pretty strong a pretty strong storm there if this does play out, and then a much more broader, weaker system off to the east. Doesn't really become very organized, moves away from the warmer waters, becomes extratropical relatively quickly. Guam and the Mariana Islands will be mainly affected by that system there. And as you can see, it completely gets absorbed, falls apart. And then it looks like we do, in fact, get another system here. Noticing how broad it is, very large in nature. We do, again, have high pressure here, here, and here, which is going to try to suppress this farther to the south. But the air pressure isn't too terribly high. If we were seeing 1030, 1040 millibar high pressure, I would think this would move generally west-northwestward. Air pressure isn't too high, so it's probably going to go more of a direction like this. That would be my guess. Similar with these other two systems. So towards China, perhaps the Japanese islands could be affected, but this is very far out in the future. It's just a signal of what we could see later down the line in the next 2 weeks. Continuing to look at some of these other models. Again, all the models are showing something developing, particularly a system impacting northern Philippines and making some sort of a landfall there in China. Now, to what the intensity is going to be, they're all generally in agreement of the general direction it's going to go. They're all in agreement with the AIFS model in terms of that's the direction it's going to go, but they're all a little bit different in terms of the intensity. Including the CMC is also a little bit different. This one's showing more of a landfall farther off to the east, while the AICFS model was showing farther off towards the south. And again, we do get more systems popping up. Again, we're going to have to really watch these systems closely. Now, as these systems, once they do really develop, we will give updates as often as possible. And if a landfall is imminent in the Philippines, Taiwan, China, Japan, or some of the Japanese islands, or even the Korean Peninsula, we will be doing a live stream on that and covering that in the full coverage. Stay tuned for that. So we really are just sort of seeing a lot of these models are all over the place. Now, remember with Icon, with the Gulf of Mexico, that system, the Gulf of Mexico, it was showing it being relatively intense. But we're not seeing anything over here, so the Icon is just really all over the place. It's not reliable, it's not accurate, and we don't believe that it is a model that you need to be monitoring and looking at and using that for predictions. You need to always go to your local government, their website, go to their weather services website, and always take the official forecasts from the official government people. All right. That's mainly going to be it. We're really going to be watching these systems developing here in the West Pacific as well as the Gulf of Mexico. That's something we're going to have to watch as well. But we will be doing live coverage in the sense if we do see something developing and make landfall there in Louisiana, we will be doing live coverage of that. Looks like an upper level low here. maybe that's outflow from that system there in central Texas. But we really are probably going to end this off here. There's not really a whole lot more that needs to be talked about, as we are currently going to be doing more videos and releasing more videos. Also, take a look at our Blue Sky website, as well as our Patreon. We have a lot more content coming out. We have a lot more exciting stuff coming for the Hurricane Watch team. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been the Hurricane Watch team, your source of cyclone information. Stay safe and stay weather aware. Peace out.